Indian nationality was at its highest peak, and people understood what they were going through. So let's look at it. Tiger Hills. Tiger Hill towers majestically above all other mountain tops in its vicinity. Although located almost 10 kilometers north of the Srinagar-Kargil Leh highway, the enemy position on this mountaintop dominated parts of this highway. After the recapture of Tololing and the adjacent features, evicting the enemy from this well-fortified position became a priority. So who was the enemy? The enemy was the Pakistan army. And both India and Pakistan were at war. What were they were at war about? To capture Kargil. We all know the ongoing war that is still taking place today, where India constantly has the notion and is well justified that Kashmir and Jammu belongs to India. But Pakistan, on the other hand, are in this constant conflict. Now, can you hear me, Yatar?
Yes. Could you go a bit slow, ma'am? Because when you go fast, the voice starts to crack.
Okay, so you all want me to, is this pace of talking fine? What I'm talking at this point now?
Yeah, ma'am.
Okay, great. So India always knew that Kargil, Srinagar, Jammu Kashmir was a part of our territory, rightfully given and rightfully in the books of law. However, Pakistan, on the other hand, constantly had this struggle about Kargil or Jammu and Kashmir being a part of their territory. And that's how the Kargil war broke out. Now, here you are talking about General Ved Malik. He was the one who actually led the expedition to Kargil, and he was the one who fought against the Pakistan army. Let's see how he did so, what he did so. As the sharp triangular top of Tiger Hill was clearly visible from the highway and appeared almost impossible to capture, the media had projected the entire episode as a national exchange. So Tiger Hill is a peak. It's a triangular peak. All right. It was impossible to capture Tiger Hill. Tiger Hill was already being captured by the enemies, that is by the Pakistanis. And it was impossible for India to lead this expedition against Tiger Hill. Moreover, there was so much of pressure from the media. Their drones had already reached Tiger Hill, and they spoke about how India was being defeated and how we were going to be losing Tiger Hill to Pakistan, which is why there was so much of pressure on General Malik, only because he was scared that under him they were going to lose the entire Tiger Hill Valley. Brigadier MPS Bajwa, commander 192 Mountain Brigade, assigned the mission of capturing Tiger Hill to 18 grenadiers, now rested and recouped after their achievements at Tololing and Hum, and to 8 Sikh, which was already deployed at its best. Both these units were assisted by a crack team from the High Altitude Warfare School with maximum possible artillery, engineering, and other combat support. Okay, so there was a commander in charge who was supposed to take over Tiger Hill, and that was none other than Commander Bajwa. Commander Bajwa realized that the best way they could take over was to have grenadiers, that means armed forces that were actually trained and involved in grenades, all right, to have the Sikh regiment, because they were very well versed with the Tiger Hill, and to see to it that even an altitude warfare, that means people who knew how to climb, army generals that who knew how to climb and fight a war at a hilltop, they also should have been roped in, because it was not possible for Indian army to fight this entire battle alone. And that's what they did. They fought, they thought every strategy possible. Their artillery was now engineered, their artillery was put together, and now they knew what they had to do to fight the entire Pakistani troop to take over Tiger Hills. Throughout the last week of June 1999, 18 grenadiers probed to establish the extent of the enemy's defenses and to scout for suitable routes for the assault. A simultaneous multi-directional assault emerged as the best strategy. The commanding officer of 41 field regiments drew up an elaborate artillery fire plan. Individual guns were ranged so as to cover each objective. Before, guns were used in a direct firing role once again with inspiring accuracy. On the day of the assault, nearly 120 field and medium guns, 22 multi-barreled Grad rocket launchers, and mortars rained death and destruction on the enemy at Tiger Hill. The Air Force 2 targeted Tiger Hill on 2nd and 3rd July and hit the bull's eye several times during its mission. So what had happened? The Pakistani troop had gone on and captured Tiger Hill. What was it necessary to do? It was necessary to have their grenadiers. It was necessary to have on-point shooting. Okay, that was the only way they could defeat the enemy. It was necessary to have multi-barreled guns or also rocket launchers so that the enemy could be killed or the enemy could be destroyed. And to add to all of this, the Air Force also joined hands with the Indian Army. So the Air Force also was targeting the bullseye, targeting the peak of Tiger Hills time and again to set forth the Pakistani troops. For the first time in India's military history, a TV channel covered the battle live, a sign of progress and transparency, not to mention the on-screen depiction of confidence. The Tiger Hill feature extends about 2,200 meters from west to east and about 1,000 meters north to south. The main extension is towards the west, on which there are two prominent protrusions. The first, approximately 500 meters west of Tiger Hill, had been named India Gate, and the second, Helmet, located another 300 meters away. Approximately one company of 12 Northern Light Infantry, Pakistan, held the whole feature. So what was it? It was a vast expanse. It was not a small place. It was huge, 2,200 meters east to west and 2,000 and 1,000 meters north to south. It was large. To add to the pressure of the Indian Army, for the first time ever in the history of India, the entire warfare was being captured on television. All right. So this was in India's military history. This had never happened. Now the TV channels were forecasting every single thing that was happening on the Kargil war. Now, in the direction towards the west, there were two protrusions. Protrusions are two parts. There were two parts. One part was 500 meters down. That was known as Tiger Hill itself, India Gate. So that was the place that led to India. And another part was around 300 meters lower, and that was called the helmet. Helmet because it was a flat, roundish curve. All right. At this place, 12 Pakistani grenadiers had already captured the peak. They were right there. So it was necessary to displace these people who were already on these protrusions, already captured Tiger Hill midway at 1900 hours. 1900 is 7 in the evening. At 1900 hours, on 3rd July, 18 grenadiers commenced its multi-directional assault under the cover of bad weather and darkness, supported by the firepower of artillery and mortars. A company captured an immediate position called Tang by 1:30 hours on 4th July. Further advance along the southeastern spur leading to Tiger Hill top was stalled due to accurate fire by the enemy from India Gate, Helmet, and top. So what happened? As they started approaching Tiger Hill, as they started moving towards the peak, they realized that they were unable to see things properly. The weather was bad. It was dark, and we all know how it's cold, it's snowy. So they decided to cease. They decided to stop their fight. However, at around 1:30, they received sharp, alarming throws from Pakistan. All right. And just when they decided that they should halt, there were fires, accurate fires from the enemy from India Gate, Helmet, and from the top. That means from the peak and from the two protrusions. Meanwhile, Captain Sachin Nimbalkar led the D Company assault from the east. His company had to negotiate steep escapement using mountaineering equipment despite the darkness and the inclement weather. Okay, so the D Company is one of the regiments. They decided that while the west was already captured and being assaulted, they would come about from the east and they would actually try and capture the Pakistanis from the east. There was darkness. The weather was absolutely unsupportable, but they used all the equipment possible to try and go to the mountaintop. His approach took the enemy by surprise. After some firefighting, D Company was successful in occupying the extreme portion of area collar, which lay within 100 meters of Tiger Hill top. Now, the enemy didn't expect anybody to come from the east because there was no pathway to come from the east. The only pathway was to come from the west. So the enemy was taken by surprise. They didn't know how to react. And because of his constant firing and because of his quick wit and steady steps, he managed to take over what we call the neck of the Tiger Hill. That means just below the peak, 100 meters below the peak. On another front, C Company and Gata, Commando Platoon,
Ma'am,
under Lieutenant, yes, yes, Yatharth, tell me.
ma'am, how did the Pakistanis, they did not know that Indians were coming from the east because since it was like morning time, they could have heard the footsteps because an entire regiment was going over there.
Okay,
They could have heard the
1:30 hours, my dear, is actually night. Okay, 1:30 is 1:30 a.m. That is night. So they had no idea that anything was happening from the other side. First of all, there was no pathway to go up from the east. The west was the part that had the two protrusions. The west was the part that had a little hamlet that they could sit on. But the east had nothing. So they never thought that the Indian army would come up from the east. That is how they were caught by surprise. Firstly, because it was 1:30 in the morning. Secondly, there was no pathway to come from the east side. Okay, Yatharth, have I answered your question? So let's continue. On another front, C Company and Ghatak platoon under Lieutenant Balwant Singh also surprised the army, this time along the difficult northeastern spur, and obtained a toehold just 30 meters from the top. So now not only from the east, from the northeastern side also, you had the C Company, another regiment under Lieutenant Balwant Singh, who took over just 30 meters below the top at 400 hours. 400 hours is 4 a.m. On 4th July, after carefully orchestrated artillery bombardment, orchestrated is carefully planned. Okay, so they planned their artillery bombardment very well. They knew exactly where to fire and what to fire. Sachin Nimbalkar and Balwant Singh, along with their men, approached Tiger Hill top to climbing a sheer cliff and caught the enemy unawares. So they fired and then they stopped. And then they climbed up the cliff. Sheer is hardly any amount, okay, rare. It's a very rare cliff. That's what they climbed. And then they caught the enemy. After a spell of hand-to-hand fighting, spell is a huge conflict. So they had quite an amount of hand-to-hand conflict. That means they must have hit each other, pushed each other. No arms and ammunition used, only hand-to-hand. They succeeded in capturing the objective. Although 18 grenadiers held the top now, linking up with them was not easy. When the initial surprise wore off, the enemy started gearing up for launching counterattacks. One of the most difficult tasks during the course of a battle is to maintain one's hold on the ground captured before the next assault can be launched. So what happened? They captured the place, but the enemy was still there. So they started counterattacking. They were not ready to give up on Tiger Hill. That was a surprise. Okay. The enemy counter-attacking was a surprise. Now, here what General Wade tells us is that the most important task in all is not to maintain the place that you are in, but to see that you don't get counter-attacked. So you may attack, but your enemy can always counter-attack you. So that was important. Though they attacked, it was necessary now to see that they were not counter-attacked. Throughout the next morning, artillery duels continued. Duels are conflicts, fights. So they kept fighting, throwing guns, throwing bombs at each other, rocket launchers, everything till the next morning throughout. Casualties mounted on both sides, casualties, deaths, injuries. So many soldiers lost their lives, lost their limbs, hands, don't talk about it. Impairment was to the highest level. The grenadiers hung onto their precarious perch. Precarious is very dangerous. With grit and determination. So what did the grenadiers do? The grenadiers decided that they would wait there and launch till the end, till the last Pakistani enemy standing was killed. Grenadier Yogendra Singh Yadav and his team members exhibited exceptional courage during his assault. So who was the one who led the forefront? It was Grenadier Yogendra Yadav. He was the one who decided to go up right to the peak and fight against the Pakistanis, face them face to face, hit grenades at them. I don't know whether you watched this in movies, but if you see a lot of these movies that have freedom fighters, if someone cannot throw grenades or if someone cannot hit a rocket launch at their enemy, what do? They walk with it themselves and they start throwing. That means they even put their life ahead. And that's what Grenadier Yadav did. He put his life and his entire team's life at hand for India. They went straight personally to hit the Pakistanis. At this stage, 8th Mount Division realized that it would not be possible to evict the enemy from Tiger Hill completely as long as the supply lines along the western spur were intact. So while they were here, a particular division of the Indian army realized that though the Pakistani army was very small out there, the target Tiger Hill, it was really not possible for them to defeat the Tiger Hills Pakistanis only because they were constantly getting supply of arms and ammunitions. And this was coming up from the western spur, from the western slope. So constantly someone was supplying them with what they needed the most, and that's arms and ammunition. So till that supply didn't stop, the Pakistanis were going to constantly attack the Indian army. Mahendrapuri and MPS Bajwa then issued order to 8 Sikhs to attack and capture Helmet and India Gate, both located on the western spur, so that any enemy reinforcements to Tiger Hill top could be prevented. So what did they have to do? The main hamlet, that is Helmet and India Gate, the main place where they were stationed and where they were getting their supplies, had to be all cut off. That was what was important. So what did they do? They employed 8 Sikhs, and they told 8 Sikhs to go right up both to Helmet and to India Gate and to seize all Pakistani supplies. And how would they do this? Only and only if they captured that place. That means if at all there was no Pakistani left anymore over there, there would be no way they would get arms and ammunition away. The move was also intended to cut off the enemy supply route. The western spur of Tiger Hill extended up to 1.5 kilometers, the approach to the spur, where 8 Sikh deployed lay along a steep rock face. An ad hoc column of 8 Sikh, led by Major Ravindra Singh and Lieutenant R.K. Serawat, comprising 4 JCOs and 52 soldiers, climbed this rock face under poor visibility conditions and was able to capture India Gate after a tough fight. So you must understand what is ad hoc. Ad hoc is something that's very important, necessary. So an ad hoc column, an ad hoc group that had 8 Sikhs, that had Major Singh, that had Lieutenant Sherawat, that had 4 JCOs, that means that had 4 border patrol controls, and 52 soldiers started marching towards the western spur of Helmet and India Gate. And why did they do it? Because they had to capture this western spur. In this battle, Subedar Nirmal Singh led the assault platoon. He was engaged in hand-to-hand fighting till the end and was also responsible for beating back a counterattack. So the most important person, you all can underline that, is Subedar Singh. Why? He was the only one who decided to go and fight the Pakistanis hand-to-hand when everyone was using grenades back then. All right? And he was the one who fought till the end. He didn't give up. Despite heavy casualties, 8 Sikhs exploited its success up to Helmet and captured the objective on 5th July. You can underline that. So the entire platoon, the 8 Sikh platoon, decided to capture Helmet on the 5th of July. How did they do it? They exploited, they killed them. It was rash. It was something that was not expected, but it had to be done, or else Indian army was going to be at stake. The enemy launched 2 counterattacks with 40 to 50 personnel is soldiers, but 8 Sikh fought gallantly and was able to repulse them. Knight Subedar Karnail Singh and Rifleman Satpal Singh, who were part of a platoon deployed on the reverse slope of Helmet, showed exceptional courage. So what did they do? There were counterattacks. And this time not from 1 and 2 and 12 police Pakistani personnel. This time there were 40 to 50. It was an entire platoon that came up, an entire brigadier that came up. But these 8 Sikhs decided not to give up whatsoever. They fought in reverse. All right. They didn't fight from down. They climbed further up and they fought in reverse with the Pakistanis. In one of these counterattacks, Captain Colonel Sher Khan of the Pakistani army was killed. Okay, Captain Colonel is nothing but a colonel. All right, they call him. They say colonel in their language in Urdu. So the colonel of the Pakistani army died. His body was subsequently handed over to the Pakistani authorities. as the bodies of the Pakistani soldiers found scattered around the battleground were collected and buried appropriately. In Delhi, I had remained anxious all through the night of 3rd July. Who's the I here? None but General Ved Malik. All right. Now, he was not, of course, going there fighting. He was the one who was invested in the strategic planning of how they were going to fight. So he couldn't be at Tiger Hills. He was in New Delhi and he was anxious as ever to know what had happened to his army. The next morning, Krishnan Pal, GOC 15 Corps, rang up at 600 hours. 600 hours is 6 o'clock in the morning to inform me that 18 grenadiers had captured Tiger Hill top and also that heavy fighting was going on. After consulting him and Nirmal Chandir Ridge, we decided to await confirmation from the GOC 8th Mountain Division. At 7:30 hours, Mohinder Puri confirmed to me that the enemy would not be able to dislodge 18 grenadiers from Tiger Hill top. So what had happened, 18 grenadiers who went on to Tiger Hill had captured, but at the cost of what? At the cost of killing hundreds of Pakistani soldiers. All right. However, what was most important to the people of India and to the Indian rulers was that we had to capture Tiger Hill, and we did so. They almost got a confirmation from Nirmal Chandel Ridge, but they could not wait until, or they could not confirm it so until the mountain division, that means the ones who actually fought it and the ones who had the mountain, until they confirmed that they had captured Tiger Hill. And until they confirmed that Pakistan could no longer dislodge them, they couldn't say so. I duly informed Brajesh Mishra, underline Brajesh Mishra. For those who don't know, he was the secretary and the defense attorney. He was actually the defense attorney advisor to the then Prime Minister, Mr. Atal Bihari. Okay, he was the principal secretary. He was the one who advised him on all issues of defense and security. I duly informed Brajesh Mishra and the Prime Minister, who was scheduled to address a public meeting in Haryana at 1000 hours. Okay, 1000 hours is at 10 o'clock. The defense minister was on his way to Amritsar. When he landed at the airport, I gave him this exciting news. How many of you all think this was exciting news? Okay, forget the story, forget that we are Indians, just think of us being humans. Okay, don't think of us as being Indians and we fought a war and we won it. How many of you think that killing hundreds of people on the opposite end and being victorious over a piece of land is true victory? Does anyone think so? It can come in as an application question. So do you all think doing such a thing is true victory? So none of you all think it. Neither do I. So what do you learn at the end of this all? I'm sure many of you all have done poems about anti-war. What do you learn? You learn that at the hands of the vested few and the hands of people who are political leaders, what has happened is we are forgetting that we are humans. We are being divided by what is so-called power and what is so-called victory, that we don't mind killing our own race. We don't mind killing our own people only so that we get that few minutes of pleasure and fame. And that is exactly what we see over here. The date 4th July 1999 was important for one more reason. Nawab Sharif was due to meet the US President Bill Clinton later in the day. About 10 to 15 hours before their meeting, we made sure that the whole world came to know about the recapture of Tiger Hill and thus the likely outcome of war. Can anyone tell me who was Nawab Sharif? Anyone? Does anyone know who was Nawab Sharif? Anybody? Okay. For all those who don't know, he was the Prime Minister of Pakistan, and he was someone who was a political head at that time. Okay, he had a lot of strong will, and he had a lot of support from the United States of America, especially the then President Bill Clinton. Now, Nawab Sharif is going to meet Bill Clinton, and of course, he was going to seek some help to defeat India. But before that could have happened, India already released the news that now they were the victorious ones. India released the news that they had recaptured Tiger Hill, and Pakistan were the losers. For some time, Pakistan even denied the existence of such mountain feature and labeled the entire operation as a figment of our imagination. The loss of Tiger Hill was a hard physical and psychological blow. Now, what was Pakistan's reply? They said, "Oh, the truth is, there's no hill only like this." Okay, it was absurd, but they said it. They said there's no hill only like this. And to add to it, the truth is such an operation never even existed. So we don't know what India is talking about. India is making up something in their own imagination. It's like a story that they have made up in their own minds. In India, a wave of jubilation and relief replaced the gloomy mood of the people. Suddenly, they were so happy. Everybody was sad before this. And now that little hope came back that they had recaptured the whole of Tiger Hill. On 8 July, after the entire Tiger Hill objective had been cleared and the situation stabilized, 18 grenadiers hoisted the Indian tricolor on Tiger Hill top. Throughout its tenure in the nearly 2-month-long war, the battalion acquitted itself with high professionalism and honor. So what happened on the 8th of July? The grenadiers, before coming down from Tiger Hill, decided to hoist the tricolor, that is the Indian flag, up there to show as a sign of victory to the world that they had conquered Tiger Hill. The war took place for 2 whole months. But according to General Wade, the war was one that was highly professional and highly honorable for him. Displaying unshakable determination and collective valor. Valor is dignity, okay, strength. All its members covered themselves with glory and notched up 2 of the finest victories for the Indian Army. After the war, as the battalion requested a UN mission, Army headquarters sent it to Sierra Leone. There too, the battalion successfully carried out a major rescue operation, Operation Corporal. So what had happened? Indian Army was now known worldwide for having such a top-notch battle and having fought such a wonderful war. But after the war took place, the UN decided to request the Indians, especially the Indian Army, to go all the way to Africa and fight an Operation Rescue campaign. That means rescue people from that place. And they did it. The Indian Army went to West Africa, fought for them, rescued the people out there, and was successful even then. So they were known to be ones who were achievable and victorious all throughout. All right, so that's your story. Any problem, children?
No, miss.
You all have understood this story? It's a very nice story, but also I am a very personal point of view. I think this is not something that you have to be glorious and victorious and happy about. Okay. On the other hand, you have mothers, wives, daughters, sons crying that their fathers died. All right. They may be Pakistanis, they may be our so-called enemies, but there was a point in time where they were our nation also. Okay, and sadly, third party, the British came in, divided us, did whatsoever. There were leaders back then who were a part of the British. There were leaders who were sucking up the British, if I could say, and they were the ones responsible for dividing the whole of India. So I don't understand why India was so happy that they killed 80 or 100 Pakistani soldiers and considered them victorious. How many of you from the ICSE schools here? Anyone from the ICSE schools? Raise your hand. Anybody? If you all remember, there was a story called there was a poem called After Blenheim, and the poem also had people dying, but the people rejoiced. The opposite team, the team that won, rejoiced. And why did they rejoice? Because they said it was such a victory. All right, it was a huge victory. It was the best victory possible. And so is India. You can see the irony. The one or their win is at the loss of someone else. All right. But yeah, at the end of it, what matters is our nationalism. We have to stand for our safety. And maybe Pakistan would have taken over the whole of the northern hills. Maybe they would have killed a lot of people. So before that could happen, India decided to step forward and put them down. Now I want you to do something. Go on to page 58. Page 58. I want you all to do this interview. Imagine that you are about to interview the writer. Write 10 to 15 questions regarding the operation. Remember, you have interview writing. I mean, when you do interview writing, you have to see to it that you don't write any questions that are yes or no. That means, are you happy that you led such an expedition? Yes, no. It has to be open-ended questions, subjective questions. For example, what gave you the zeal to lead such a troop? Or what gave you the zeal to lead such an expedition? Or what were your plans in mind back then? Or sitting back in Delhi, what ran across your mind while your grenadiers were trying to capture Tiger Hill? So I want you to at least write down 10 questions, student, no answers, only questions. And I'm going to ask you all for those questions. Come on, I'm giving you all around 10 minutes or so. It's around 3:46 on my watch. Say at around 3:55, I will question you. Children, I'm giving you 5 minutes more. You'll have around 4 minutes. I'm giving you 2 minutes more. Children, also try to do the A to fifth one, the flow chart. Okay, A to fifth one also, please try to do that. All right, let's start. Anyone who has a question, there are 10 questions that you'll have to give me. So each one, come on, can you give me 1 or 2 questions? Let's begin. There's Yatharth, Krish, Parth, Kazan, Vivan, Vishnu, Sudesh, Harshal. Any one of you, please begin.
May I answer?
Yes, Sudesh, please do. Give me all your
What
questions, how many ever you have.
what message would you send to citizens of a country when a war is being fought?
Excellent, very nice.
What were the measures taken by you to ensure a smooth supply of arms and ammunitions?
Very good.
Mm, what, according to you, were the biggest challenge on Tiger Hill?
Okay, very nice.
Did you intercept any messages from across the border?
Okay, did you intercept any messages is not something that you could write because it's a yes no question. So let's reframe that, the same question. What was the question? Did you intercept any messages from?
Across the border.
Okay, so how did you respond to any messages that you have intercepted to you from across the border? So he will tell you whether he got messages or no. And if he did, then he'll also tell you how he maybe responded or how he gave messages across. So this is
Okay.
how you would not use did, has, will, because they give you yes, no answers. Clear?
Okay.
Continue.
Yes. What was the role played by the spies?
Very good. Excellent.
Um, and what boosted the morale of the Indian soldiers during the war?
Excellent. Very nice. So besides that one question, very well framed questions. I hope you put a question mark at the end of every question, because if you
Yes,
don't put
miss.
question marks, the HSC board gives you a 0. Okay, for interview writing. Very nice. Anyone else who's deciphered or written any questions as per the interview writing? Anybody? Siddesh, well done. Good jump start. Anybody else? Even if you have written 2 questions, 3 questions, is absolutely fine. But yes, please participate. Only then I'll know whether you are understanding what I'm teaching you or no. All right. So children, I expect you to do this as your homework. You do the interview writing as your homework. You also do question 2-5. Okay, A-5 is what you all will do. It's a flow chart. It's something that comes for your writing skills in the English paper itself. Okay, of course, you have smaller paragraphs to do flow charts, but yes, this would be a good practice for you all also. All right, you'll take care. You'll have a nice day. I will see you all in the next class. We will do a poem and we'll do a writing skill in the next class. All right, bye bye. Take care.
By miss.
Bye.